So I want to review the episode The Boondocks Good Times, and to me this represents the ultimate fall of the Boondocks series. Like I do think that, the only good thing about this episode is that it really sets up the characters that they want to end the series with and the storyline that they want to end the series with. And what that means is that, you meet this new character who is Ed Wunsler the second. So he is Ed Wunsler's senior's father, the old guy, and then also Ed Wunsler, the Wigger's father. And then the other thing about it is that I'm not sure if Ed Asner passed away because he's not in the last season, because he plays like Ed Senior. But like what happens is that the Freemans are in debt because Granddad doesn't understand mortgages and finances, and just how if you look for deals online that actually or loans or mortgages or credit cards, like how people don't read the fine print or don't understand what they're signing. They're just interested in the easy cash and they get taken advantage of. So now they're in debt for the rest of the season. So it's definitely an entire episode really just about how people get taken advantage of. So it does start out with Granddad losing all their funds, so the Freemans are poor. And what happened is that Eddie Wunsler comes into the house. And one of the reasons why I don't like Eddie Wunsler as a character is, first of all, their name structure is all confusing. So it's Ed Wunsler, Eddie Wunsler, or Ed the second, or Ed Wunsler the third. So it's a little confusing that they all have the same name, Ed. But I understand how dynasties, everybody shares the same name, or so it's supposed to give you a sense of magnanimity. And then he also has an assistant like Vanderbilt. So the first thing that they do is that they kind of just they're very, very manipulative people. So he's kind of like, instead of like the $3 or $4 million you owe us, give us $52,000. They don't come up with the money. So what happens is that Eddie Wunsler loses his patience, and he's like, okay, you guys can just rent out the entire house, turn into like a commune thing. So they live in the garage, but Eddie Wunsler expects them to still come up with a lot of money, almost like the renting out the whole entire house doesn't mean anything. Like, for example, I live in a condo, so I think that maybe there's like 60, there's probably 30 rooms. So imagine if I still owed debts to the bank and they only cared about my debts, but all the other money that they're getting from all the other people, even though that's me owning the property, making the money, they don't count that towards what I owe, but they're collecting that, So it's like the 99% that you're paying doesn't count, but the 1% that you have to come up with does count. So it's kind of almost like that, really. And it's also kind of bad too, because with Granddad, he kind of gets bullied and trashed in his own home. So I do think that what's also showing is how people are losing their self-esteem when they're broken or things like that. And it's also fun what Vanderbilt, Eddie's assistant, says. It's not too late for you to fake your own deaths. And what that means is that sometimes that's really the only way out from being financially taken advantage, is just to either commit suicide. Some people do that, or you fake your own death, or you just move to another country and hope that nobody tracks you down, really, because that can be a way. The other subplot of this episode is that Uncle Ruckus runs for president, and then he settles down for being mayor of Woodcrest. So it's definitely what we kind of see, that he's doing multiple, he does 3 different jobs. He's a presidential candidate, he's the mayor of Woodcrest, and he also opens up a car dealership. And then the other issue, a car wash. And then the other issue that happens is that when Granddad is so broke that he works at the car wash, he says that he's fired or temporarily laid off. But then in the next episode, at the Breaking Granddad ones, he is deducted a day's pay. So there's some inconsistencies. And I think the other thing that I don't like as a C plot is they also reference Good Times. So you hear the good times hanging in a child line, good times, and all that a bunch of times. So I hated that because most younger people don't know what Good Times is. And they could have done a little bit more references. At least with the Hatocracy episode, they actually made characters modeled after the characters from Sanford and Son. and that's the only thing that they did. But also when you saw the fight sequences and them wearing like all black and white, they're referencing Tarantino without like kind of putting it in your face. But in this episode with Good Times, they're playing the theme song, they're doing the credits, they're doing other things like that. So there is kind of like Good Time references to a point where you may want to just explain that to the younger audience what Good Times is, not just kind of like flash it and really do nothing with it. So I felt that that was kind of bad writing, and I also hate the ending where you kind of see them in a cartoon form, as if they're as if you take the Boondocks characters and you animate them, and you take the Boondocks characters, you draw them as characters from Good Times, and then you just end it with that. And I kind of felt that that was just like, you know what, if I was in the writing room, I would just be grab my hand, start smacking all the writers in the back of their heads for doing that, because it felt too much like personalization, or just like how you see with like these Disney movies, like how they just change the whole story completely because they want to just make a more like socially friendly version. Or sometimes like how people don't like, you know, Blue Harvest and Family Guy, where they take the where they take Star Wars and they do their own rendition, or that episode of The Simpsons, you know, the episode of Family Guy where they take Homer Simpson and put it in the universe, where it does kind of seem like, you know, they're trying to blend, they're almost trying to take ideas from different sources and do their own version, and it comes off as, you know, more, not just lazy for taking another idea, but also half-assed. So it just shows like the weaknesses of the writing staff, but also like, you know, they make it high in their own ideas or high referencing other things, but they actually execute in a way that's not good writing. And I also think too that what also makes this episode bad writing is that, you know, this is ultimately like a couple of things you're seeing. You know, you're seeing so many. Sorry, I just had to stop it for just a minute because, you know, one of my relatives walked out. You know, no big deal. You know, I'm not rich enough to have my studio yet. But the thing about it is that that I do think that, you know, like there's a lot of things in this episode that I really don't like, and I definitely kind of just feel like, you know, there's a lot of flanderization. You see Granddad being so naive that he gets taken advantage of. So he kind of, but like in other episodes, he is a little street smart. But in this episode, you kind of see him as like, you know, the old man that just is so dumb and gullible that he's going to agree to anything that he signs. And then you also kind of see Huey just being so like a whiner. And, you know, he more becomes like Lisa Huey or Lisa Huey Simpson. You know, and then you kind of see like Riley just going along just to be there. And then also you kind of see Eddie Wunsler. And I don't like Eddie Wunsler because he comes off as a stereotypical Italian American. Like he honestly feels like he could be, he feels like, you know, he feels like he was, he honestly feels like he should be in Goodfellas or a Martin Scorsese film. So, it's just not good writing. And then, but the only good thing about this is that you're kind of setting up the story arc that they want to tell in the fourth season, and it's kind of good because that works that way. But also too, you're kind of doing what you do with Uncle Ruckus, which is you make him kind of like a politician. You kind of make him like the comic relief of the episode. You know, like it's just kind of bland with these characters, but you have Uncle Ruckus going, you know, just calling Barack Obama a nigger and other things like that. So I mean, they've done that with the Jimmy Rebel episode, so it does kind of feel like they're grasping at straws. But I don't think that I do think this is an episode where it clearly shows that they're not doing the best that they can. And even with like the Uncle Ruckus thing, like honestly, like even though it's kind of satirical, because obviously there are a lot of politicians or Republican politicians or right-wing politicians that are very politically incorrect, that are very racist. So Uncle Ruckus is more like, you know, saying what they mean to say. But I do think that, honestly, it's unrealistic. You know, nobody would kind of agree with a person that's trying to reinforce slavery and other things like that. But I also kind of appreciate the other message that they're trying to get is that the politicians and the bankers work together to get the results that they want. That's kind of what happened. And then the other thing that I would kind of say is that them being sold into slavery, I do think that, you know, it's a little unrealistic, but it's obviously part of the politically incorrect humor at the end. And it kind of shows you what you kind of see, which is that really, and the moral, I think, of this whole episode is that really you become a slave when you have no financial sense. And also when you allow yourself to get taken advantage of. And as I said, Granddad was definitely very street smart in many other episodes, slightly naive, but I do think that, he's not listening to Huey, the voice of reason. He just does what he wants to do. And as Granddad selfishly says, that, when he dies, he doesn't have that much time left. So if he's like a slave for 4 or 5 years, but if Huey and Riley are lifelong slaves, he doesn't care about their well being. So, and that's also kind of like, what we see about Granddad's character and what makes him kind of abhorrent is that he only cares about his happiness at the expense of his grandchildren. So, it's definitely a bad episode. And it also kind of shows also the bad qualities of all these characters. You see Huey more as a whiner, but not somebody like he knows how to kind of stand up and fight his granddad or making sure nobody he doesn't sign the contract. You also kind of see, Uncle Ruckus being racist to a point where he's charismatic, where people follow him, but you also kind of don't have that following through. You kind of have Eddie Wunsler there because they're trying to make this unethical businessman. The easiest way to do that is to make him a mobster, and because really the actor that plays him has an Italian accent, so why not make him a Martin Scorsese type of person, a type of character? And then also, Granddad being the ultimately selfish, naive grandparent. So ultimately, you Flanderized all the characters. You reference a show like Good Times without any type of like context. And it really came off like personalization, which means that I'm gonna put this thing in my story. It may not make sense to the audience, but I just want to do it for the sake of wanting to do it. Like I was telling my brother, I remember throwing up when I was a kid because somebody decided to make spaghetti and meatballs, but with raisins in the meatballs. So sometimes when you kind of have that thing too in your writing or your TV show where you're throwing things in because you think it's good, sometimes you need to step back and say it's not that good and just stop what you're doing. To me, the Good Times is the worst episode of the Boondocks, and sadly represents really the huge drop in quality. The same way you look at Armor Tenzarian, Principal and the Pauper as being the episode that really represented the downfall of the Simpsons, and that's that really.